Damian, I just want to say thank you and welcome to our congregation. We really appreciate having you here with us this Sunday morning. Would you just introduce yourself and your title or role at the organization?
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Damian Thompson. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm the Director of Public Policy and Communications for Iowa Safe Schools. So I lead all of our community relations as well as our public relations and communications work. And I'm also our organization's lobbyist, both at the state capitol, at the local level, as well as in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So our congregation is an open and affirming congregation. And so we have certainly been very interested in all of the activity that has happened at the state legislature. And for most of us in our congregation, probably do not feel that it's the most positive activity, certainly that this session. And so I guess the first question really is, when you think about the LGBTQ community, what would you say are some of the most challenging obstacles to really ending kind of this persecution of the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, I would say the biggest obstacle is going to be just the lack of education and understanding, and to a certain extent, empathy by a lot of folks pushing these anti LGBTQ policies. We see time and time again as acceptance for the LGBTQ community has increased. That exponential increase really has been tied to folks having real direct stories in their community or in their families or in their congregation of an LGBTQ person being happy and successful and living a life just like any other American might want. And so when you are able to humanize these stories, make them real for many folks in the legislature who a lot of these people live in somewhat isolated rural communities. There's not a lot of
Mhm.
LGBTQ people there, or especially transgender people. So it's easy to demonize and other with that which might not be familiar
Mhm.
to oneself. But when you actually get to meet our students, meet our LGBTQ parents and educators, you see that what they want is just like anyone else might want, equal rights and acceptance in their communities.
So can you talk a little bit about what specifically does your organization do then to again kind of combat this persecution that we've been seeing?
Yeah, so our organization was founded in 2002 by members of the Iowa Civil Rights Commission,
Mm.
specifically to address in mind LGBTQ targeted bullying in our schools. Because then and even now, we see LGBTQ youth are the highest targeted minority population from bullying in our schools in Iowa. And so after a few years in 2007, we were able to pass the Iowa Safe Schools Act, which is our state's anti-bullying law, as well as add gender identity and sexual orientation to the Iowa Civil Rights Act. And so since 2007, we've really grown and expanded our programming into working directly with students in the Gay Straight Alliances, which are these after school groups in all 99 counties. We serve over 10,000 kids every single year, as well as serving over 4,000 educators, school administrators, and paraprofessionals, providing them with best practices and curriculum to support the LGBTQ student populations in our schools. But in the last few years, we've also expanded to offer parent and family programming. So we have a
Oh,
parent and family coordinator that works with whether it be LGBTQ parents or straight cisgender parents of LGBTQ kiddos to make sure that they have the resources to create the safest
mm.
environment for those children and their families. And we also, as I mentioned, do lobby and speak up for our students at the state capitol in Washington, D.C., and at school board and other local municipalities.
Thank you. That's really helpful for us to understand the work that your organization is doing. I'm curious, on a personal level, like what is one thing that you wish that you could change to really bring about LGBTQ equality?
Yeah, kind of referring back to your first question, I think I wish that there was always that perfect scenario that could make the LGBT community relatable and real for so many of whether it's state legislators or more conservative activists. Because I've really seen it's not been a lot recently, but some minds really changed, have done a total 180 when you're able to present either whether it's an elected official, a constituent, or even a family member that is, say, transgender, and they're just they exist and they're in your community and they're
Yeah.
thriving and a normal human being and they just want to use the restroom like you do. And making what is unfamiliar familiar and relatable and understandable. Really, our personal stories as LGBTQ people are our strongest assets. So I just wish for every legislator, even most legislators, we had that perfect constituent or someone related to them in some random way that could help them understand. And don't be wrong. Don't be fooled. There are folks that don't want to understand and do want to
Mhm.
antagonize and cause problems. But in many cases, when we're able to make these issues real and relatable, minds get changed.
So, what is it that our congregation can do to help? We talk about really wanting to be justice seeking. So, what is something that we as a congregation could do to assist?
Yeah, I would say absolutely keep an eye on Iowa Safe Schools Facebook page, Twitter and Instagram, all at Iowa Safe Schools. We post our legislative alerts constantly. And when we're not in the legislative session, we have a ton of events and programming that are aimed to benefit and reach out to our students. So please come to our events, work with our students. Donate is absolutely critical as a five-person organization, especially in this climate. Our resources are stretched extremely thin, so every dollar counts. I would highly encourage everyone at your congregation to consider opening their wallets for our great organization. Um, but also, when we're doing events like our Day on the Hill, come up to our Day on the Hill and speak up for these LGBTQ students who are so often marginalized and their voices are taken away by folks at the State House. If you're not able to make it to stuff like that, please write your legislators, call your legislators. If you have a cousin in Northwest Iowa who is a state senator, please reach out to them. Everybody can contribute to making our state a more welcoming place. And I would highly encourage you to do at least one of the things I've offered.
Great. My final question really is, as a congregation, we've been on this journey to really kind of think about our vision for who we want to be and who we want to live into. And as I said, part of that is really for us to understand how we want to be justice seekers, and a justice seeking congregation. So I guess my final question would be to you, what would justice really look like in the form of LGBTQ equality?
Yeah, I would say um, really ensuring that members of the LGBTQ community can go about their lives, contribute to the community at large, their state, and thrive and be successful and have the same accessibility and rights as everyone else. And some folks may think, okay, marriage equality was decided a few years ago. What else? What other rights could you want? In many other states, you can be openly discriminated against in public accommodation, healthcare, up until fairly recently, employment if you are LGBTQ. Um, in our own state, we have an entire swath of students who are transgender who now cannot access life-saving care. They cannot use the restrooms. Discussion of either their parents who might be LGBTQ or their own identities in classrooms has been entirely shut down. Books, which might be affirming to their identities, which is crucial to student mental health, regardless of what population they're from, are being banned openly and restricted. So we have a long ways to go, but it's also, as a movement, we've come a long way since the 60s and 70s and the gay liberation movement. So I would just encourage the members of your congregation to think holistically, in terms of where we have come from, but also the incredible work that remains to be done. This legislative session has shown that the LGBTQ community are under attack in our country, especially LGBTQ youth. So please keep an eye out on Iowa Safe Schools Facebook page and other platforms for opportunities to engage in and support our students because they need it more than ever right now.
Hmm. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you for sharing your insights and advice with us. We really do appreciate it and look forward to continuing the conversation. So, Damian Thompson, Iowa Safe Schools, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.